Greetings, it's Tuesday, June 10th, and this is IT SPARC Cast CVE of the Week, where we pick a common vulnerability entry that you need to know about and how to mitigate ASAP. And as is per the trend, we don't always pick a CVE, and today, Lou has got a really interesting concept that's come up as a collaboration. Lou, why don't you take us right to it?
Absolutely. So, John, thanks for leading me off. So, some of the most important things happening in security right now are really not what you'd consider a breach or a vulnerability. The big challenge is trying to get ahead of what's happening. And to get ahead of what's happening, you have to know what's going on. So, recently we picked out of Slashdot, but via linkage from other folks, a new initiative coming from Microsoft, CrowdStrike, Palo Alto Networks, Google, and others, a joint effort to create a public glossary standardizing nicknames for state-sponsored hacking groups and cybercriminals. So originally, how did we get here, right? Well, we've got this patchwork of protection that's both quasi-government and private. Obviously, the private drive is going to be very, very effective because it's going to be impacted by your insurance. People really pay attention when money's at stake. Government entities are a little less reliable because they always have their own agenda. But one of the challenges that we've been running into is, are we definitively defining who's making these attacks? And because attack vectors follow personalities, right? People tend to approach problems in similar methods. If I'm the sort of person who's going to look to flap a port and do an overflow on a TCP protocol or something like that, chances are the next bug I go after will be very similar. So there's a huge amount of value in defining who is causing the trouble and making sure we track them in the same way. Well, congratulations. You would think that that's obvious, but up until now, that has not been what's happening. So we have groups out there that are attacking on the state, malicious actors from the state perspective, malicious actors from the semi-state sponsored cybercrime that are being misidentified. And they're being multiply identified by multiple organizations in different ways, which actually works to their favor. It works to their favor to be confused about who they are, because more effort has to be expended to sort of rein them in. So what this is going to do is create a methodology, a standardized repository to name these morons. All right. It's an industry-wide effort, so it's going to open up. They're going to involve additional partners and potentially the U.S. government, streamline the identification. And it's led to some serious inefficiencies. There was a 2016 U.S. government report, 48 different nicknames for Russian hacking groups, complicating threat intelligence sharing. And the goal is simply a unified glossary is going to enable us to better filter and mitigate the attacks. So I think this is probably the biggest thing that happened this week in security.
Yeah, you know what, Lou? I'm glad you picked this one. And on the surface, you could make an argument that this is silly, but I think that this is really, really important. And there's a couple of things here. One is the multiple names thing is really important, so that we have a unique identifier. So when you have any kind of other threat actor who has multiple aliases, that makes them harder to find. So when we're talking about hacking organizations and vulnerabilities, and we have even viruses that might have more than one name, having that makes that much harder. But then when you start giving them cute names like Cozy Bear or something along those lines, going to your CEO and saying, I need additional funding to protect us against Cozy Bear, it's a little harder than when you go and say, well, we've got virus XYZ that has been certified by Google and Microsoft and CrowdStrike. That's a little bit more significant of an argument. So I think that this is really important, and I'm glad you did choose it as something for us to talk about.
The other interesting thing about this, in my opinion, is this is going to speed fingerprint analysis.
Yes.
For how the groups themselves operate. Just as a program or an exploit comes in with a certain fingerprint, on how it does it. And tracking these groups will enable us to look for aggregate fingerprints, and they're almost always there. Actually mapping the social function of a team effort also produces a fingerprint. And that means when the next threat pops up and you see similar fingerprinting, you have a lead on how to attack the problem. So this is, as John, as you said, it seems like it's a trivial thing, but it's actually a very, very important step we just took.
It is. And that's going to cover this episode. We couldn't do podcasts like this without listeners like you. We would love to hear what you think. Are there other topics you want us to cover on our CVE of the week or any of our other episodes? Send email to feedback@itsparkcast.com or hit us up on X @IT SPARC Cast. Be sure to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. If you're on YouTube, that'll help you find out about as soon as we drop a video, and you'll be able to watch that right away. And if you're on YouTube, please leave a comment down below and let us know you're there. We do read every single comment. We respond to most.
Absolutely.
So with that, from the world of enterprise IT, take care.